Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is Dan Schindler, here with my colleague, Paul Ray. We are Anders CPAs and advisors, and we are here for another edition of PPP with Paul and Dan. So sometimes it feels like Groundhog Day, and we're talking about the same thing each segment. We'll try to deviate a bit here and address some of the more common questions we are receiving. As clients are getting closer and closer to the end of their covered period, the questions are starting to pop up regarding the timing of PPP loan forgiveness applications and everything associated with it. Paul, what are some of the common key questions we are being asked about forgiveness and year-end planning?
Well, Dan, I think the overarching questions are a couple. It's sort of should I or shouldn't I, or can I or can't I? And that seems to be the most important questions. So let's start with the first. Really, should I submit my application now? Why not? We know that's the million-dollar question. The reason we are still advising patients for our clients is that there really are many more reasons to wait than there are to proceed. It's clear that there are going to be clarifications on this program. When? No one knows. Is it going to be before the election? Is it going to be after the election? If we all had a crystal ball, we would have all the answers. But if Congress can get over itself and move forward and agree on a few things, we'd be good. But there are many things that they agree on now. Potentially second round of the PPP program for certain businesses. And if that's the case, it's most likely going to aggregate your current PPP with the new one. Can't imagine how else they would do that. That would certainly simplify reapplying for another forgiveness application later on down the road. There is more simplification on documentation requirements that are expected, even some potential expansion of eligible costs. Whether or not all of this gets included, we don't know, but it certainly lends one to think that they're headed in that direction. But with all that being said, if your bank is accepting the applications and you're comfortable with all your documentation, and if this is really weighing on your mind, you can certainly move forward. That's your decision, and we want you to be comfortable in what you do. So the next question really is, can I actually submit my application now? And that may be the most important. And the short answer is yes, you certainly can submit. But, we're seeing banks not accepting applications now, and to be really accurate, the majority of the banks aren't accepting yet. Some have, some haven't. However, we're starting to see announcements of dates mid to late September, October, and all these dates are subject to change. So things are starting to move forward. So our advice is to get ready and begin that process, but follow the advice of your bank when they have these portals open. So can I get forgiveness in 2020? It seems like it's getting late in the game. Well, it sort of is, but one of the challenges, if you couldn't even apply before, it really was out of your hands. It's going to be very difficult to get any sort of forgiveness before the end of calendar year 2020, just based on the SBA's timing and the bank's timing. Typically, the SBA, our expectation is they're going to take the longer portion of their 90 days. And in many instances, certainly larger banks that are going to be inundated with applications, they're going to take a long time as well. They have up to 60 days. So if you start to do the math, worrying about getting it forgiven in 2020 is not something that I would particularly worry about. So if you move past that, what about this clarification? What about CARES Act 2.0? We're hearing that there's possibilities every day. We think on one hand it's going to happen, on the other hand it's not. But I think it's obviously likely that something is going to happen. Something has to change to make sure that we move forward from an economic standpoint and the ability to get folks additional dollars and forgiveness on the dollars that have been put out there. It's just the timing and the dollar amount are the two largest unknowns, and there's a lot of fighting over that. But what seems to be the important aspects of any bill that there is some agreement on, as we spoke earlier, second round of the stimulus checks may be out there. Certainly reallocation of funds that are already out in the CARES Act, $130 billion still sitting out there for the Paycheck Protection Program. With that, you have to believe that there's going to be a second round, and you have to believe there's going to be adjustments to the rules currently. A lot of ambiguous guidance that's out there right now. And then there's always the IRS corrections and guidance regarding deductibility of expenses that were paid for with the forgiveness of the PPP funds. No one has any idea where that's going, and I think there's still a lot of interest around that. Talk about state and local government funding, liability protections, unemployment assistance is something that's still out there that there is some consensus agreement on. So what's your thoughts? When could the next stimulus package be coming? Well, I think the timing is completely unclear and ever changing. Every day we think we have it figured out, and something changes that moves us to a different perspective. So stay tuned for more updates, and we'll make sure that we pass those along as we can. So all the things that I just spoke about still has created uncertainty around the questions for year-end tax planning. So Dan, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, certainly. Thanks, Paul. In regards to CARES Act 2.0, certainly seems like one step forward, two steps back these days, but hopefully we can push forward and get something passed. But yeah, as you mentioned, year-end tax planning is certainly a fluid situation. A little bit more difficult this year than in past years, quite honestly. As you alluded to, and as many know, we are cautiously optimistic that there will be a change in Congress that fixes the IRS's position, the current position on the deductibility of expenses used with PPP funds. The intent of the CARES Act was to have these PPP funds forgiven on a tax-free basis, but the IRS put a stop to that back in April that more or less treats them as taxable by way of non-deductible expenses. However, as of now, expenses paid with forgiven PPP funds are non-deductible. What remains unclear, though, is which tax year those expenses are non-deductible. Is it 2020 tax returns? Or is it not until 2021 when the forgiveness is ultimately determined? You know, as Paul was alluding to, we don't really expect any PPP funds to be forgiven in calendar year 2020 by the time it gets through the bank and the SBA and ultimate forgiveness is decided. So, are those expenses non-deductible in 2020 or in 2021 when that forgiveness is ultimately decided? So with these uncertainties, and there's a few others, we're following all these obstacles on a daily basis and really hope to have some clarity within the coming months in order to provide the most appropriate year-end tax planning advice.
You know, Dan, bankers, CPAs, attorneys, we all love to deal in absolutes and we love to deal in facts. And there's a lot of things out there right now that are more opinion than they are facts-based. You know, as we've said all along, change is the only certainty that we've seen in this whole process. So remember, at the end of the day, you're still the boss. You dictate the timing of the things that you want to do as a client. But a safe bet is sort of just kind of work between the extremes. Don't be too early on anything, but certainly we don't want you to be too late on it as well. So just stay in touch and consult your advisors. So thanks for joining us, and we hope to have more current information next week. Have a great day.